It's my nerd world. Welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice. More talk about the Rise of Skywalker final trailer. Not going to be the final trailer. We'll get into that at the start of the show this week. Watching the sequel trilogy trailers together is a unique experience. I'll share mine with you. Talk a little bit about the Rise of Kylo Ren comic book that has Ben and Luke taking on the Knights of Ren. Also, a bit of religious symbolism when it comes to Ben Solo. Something we haven't talked about on the show yet, but just knowing a little bit more about the story of the Rise of Skywalker from official sources, not talking about leaks, official sources, has brought out an idea that, again, we haven't touched upon on the show. Looking forward to that. And we will talk about the story of the Rise of Skywalker and why I'm so excited about it. Again, not based off of leaks, but just based off of official information of what we've seen so far and what has me over the moon of Endor excited for this movie. We got a ton of listener feedback to get into as well. And then after listener feedback, we will be talking about the Jedi Paxis leaks. Not in detail. More about where these leaks potentially could be coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. So even if you stick around for some discussion about the Jedi Paxis leaks, I can kind of assure you that you won't be hearing any spoilers. At least that's going to be my intent, is to not talk much about spoilers and just official information. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. I'm glad you checked out the show this week. Let's get started.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now you're coming together. Is your undoing. Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
When you add in the D23 teaser footage, when you add in the footage from the first teaser trailer that we got at Celebration, when you add in the little glimpses of hard-to-see footage that has emerged since the release of the final trailer this week of Rey, Finn, Poe, and C-3PO on some skiffs being chased. We've seen a little bit of footage of this, but there's some extended footage that was put out in a United Airlines flight video, for crying out loud. Somebody was able to isolate just the video and took the flight attendants out of the picture and has put it on loop. It's available on one of the Reddit pages. Look, when you take all that footage, at least for me, right? And this is just me expressing my fandom. I mentioned this last week, and it still rings true right now. I want to see every single one of these scenes. And I don't remember feeling the same way about the other Star Wars movies. So let me try to explain a little bit, because this might sound like it's somewhat confusing. I'm always excited for a new Star Wars movie, right? I love all of Star Wars. There was on Twitter, it was trending over the course of the past few days. Rank your Star Wars movies, right? And so it was going viral, and everybody was putting out their definitive list of the Star Wars movies ranked. And I've said this before, I don't rank the films anymore. I love all of the Star Wars movies, and I love some of them more than others at different points in time. I'm done ranking them. I have ones that are usually more towards the top, but I love all of these movies. I was beyond excited to see The Force Awakens. That excitement was really rooted in new Star Wars. We weren't supposed to get any more movies after Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith, by the way, watching that tonight on my journey to The Force Awakens, as we watch the movies chronologically. Looking forward to it tonight. And then next week it'll be Solo. But I was excited for The Force Awakens in a very unique and specific way. And that was because it was the return of Star Wars on the big screen. And just was... I couldn't wait to watch the movie. When we finally got into the theater on opening night, it was the longest 45 minutes I'd ever of my entire life. The clock just stopped. Same thing for The Last Jedi. Now, I will say, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, watching The Last Jedi trailer is a very interesting experience when going and watching the Rise of Skywalker trailer. But for that movie, I was very, very excited for that movie. I was very excited because I loved The Force Awakens as much as I did, and I knew that we were getting something unique and different, not something that was filled with intentional nostalgia to bring the excitement back to Star Wars after the prequels, right? That's what The Force Awakens was. Don't need to go down that road again. Love that movie, but, obviously it's the echoes and comparisons to the original trilogy have all been done to death. But for The Last Jedi, I was really excited because this is going to be just something different and something new. I liked Rian Johnson as a filmmaker. I thought he was unique. And so maybe this movie, and obviously it was, is going to be a challenging Star Wars movie. And, of course, that full trailer for The Last Jedi is just fantastic. I think I like the full trailer for The Rise of Skywalker more, and I'll talk about this. But that's really, really tough to say for certain, because I am one of those types of fans where I really like and gravitate towards the newest thing. So it's tough to get perspective on it until you've had some time to spend with it. But going back and rewatching that Last Jedi trailer, I was just excited for that film. Again, excited for different reasons. For the director, for the potential of something new and different within Star Wars. Heading into The Rise of Skywalker, I'm excited for a lot of different reasons. I'm excited because it's the last movie in this saga that I've lived with since I was 5 years old. I'm excited at the potential of what this can mean when this whole 9-movie arc storyline is complete. I'm excited for the 9-movie story arc to be complete, right? I am really excited about the visuals of this film. The trailers and all the footage just looks incredible. But I'm excited for the story. And again, I do know the spoilers. I've read all of them. I do believe a lot of them are true. I think there are some very key aspects of the spoilers that have been put out there that are probably wrong. And we're going to talk about this after listener feedback this week. Some really interesting insight from somebody who works in the industry about where they believe these spoilers are actually originating from. And quite honestly, it points to that clip that I talked about a moment ago on the United Airlines, welcome on board video, that there's a lot of companies that have footage of the Rise of Skywalker, and probably a lot of it. So I don't think these leaks, and this particular insider doesn't believe that these leaks are necessarily coming from official Disney or Lucasfilm or Bad Robot sources. They're coming from secondary sources, which might be providing some confusion as individuals get an abundance of information and details based off of footage and then try to create the connective tissue, a lot of which is probably true, but a lot of which is obviously missing a lot of different steps. So just looking at this strictly from a story level, I am excited for this story. It does very much have a kind of Return of the Jedi vibe, where we've got obviously Rey on her journey with Kylo Ren, but she's on this adventure with her friends, but her friends also have a challenge ahead of them. And this movie seems like it's taken everything that has come before it and ramped it up to a completely different level. And that's what it has to do. I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I own all the extended Blu-rays of those. But this sequel trilogy is very much beginning to feel and look like that, where you have the opening film of, Fellowship of the Ring, and obviously based off of books. You have this fantastic middle chapter of the Two Towers, and then when you get to Return to the King, it is an epic film. It is broad and huge in scope, and this is the final confrontation. And so we're going to take everything that you've seen before in the films prior, but we're going to make it bigger. We're going to make it bolder. We're going to raise the stakes. That's what the Rise of Skywalker feels like for me. The Matrix trilogy does that. I'm a fan of all three of those films. I know a lot of people aren't, but I am. And it's the journey you take going from the first Matrix to Reloaded to Revolutions. It really does build up to this massive climax. And everything that I've seen so far of the footage of this film, I am dying to see play out on screen. And I'm repeating a bit of what I said earlier this week, where I talked about this and certain things in The Last Jedi that I wasn't necessarily looking forward to seeing. Everything in this film, I am interested in. The other thing I wanted to get into before we talk a little bit of news, and then again, a lot of listener feedback, so we'll spend a lot of time on listener feedback this week. But then something else I wanted to get into was watching these trailers. And especially, again, that Last Jedi trailer, and then going into The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm treading over some old ground, but just bear with me, because I hadn't watched The Last Jedi trailer before I'd watched the Rise of Skywalker trailer. But going back and watching that full trailer, that's the story of Rey and Kylo, man. And I'm going to keep saying it. Reylo is Endgame in some way, shape, or form. Right? That's the core of this story. And we don't get to have whatever story is going to be told in The Rise of Skywalker between these two dual protagonists unless they went through what they went through in The Last Jedi. And I'll keep saying it, and I will correct myself if I'm wrong, but I really do feel like this final chapter in this trilogy is going to create one of the best trilogies of all three. I know some of you have already said that. And an amazing final film to this 9-film saga. And I guess I say that with a little tinge of pushback against the Last Jedi crowd. That isn't necessarily my intention, but there is a part of me that feels like there's going to be a lot of re-examining of The Last Jedi in the wake of what The Rise of Skywalker is going to do, and I hope that people will give it a chance again. I was listening to another podcast this week, and I wrestled with whether or not I wanted to talk about this, but I was listening to another podcast this week, and the host, as most of the podcasts was talking about the Rise of Skywalker trailer, and they started to go down this rant of Finn and Finn being wasted in The Last Jedi and not having a storyline and pushed off to the side. And I'm sorry, what movie were you watching? You don't have to like the adventure that Finn went on, but to say that his character got pushed to the side in The Last Jedi, I'm sorry, it's just not factually accurate. As a matter of fact, it's one of the big complaints coming from the fandom menace side of things, that there was too much time spent with Finn, especially on Canto Bight. I love that Finn storyline in The Last Jedi. I'd love to be able to sit down with John Boyega and ask him personally what he thinks, because I actually thought that he had an incredibly significant role in The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi took a very sort of Empire Strikes Back stance on the characters in splitting them up and having them go on their own adventures. And I've grown to adore and love the Canto Bight sequence. I think that the one-on-one battle between Finn and Phasma is fantastic, not to mention his role at the end of the film in the battle on Creighton, what happens with him and Rose. I'm sorry, I just had to go off on a tangent, and I wrestled with whether or not I wanted to vent, but clearly I needed to go and vent. But that Last Jedi trailer really did lay out what that movie was about. This individual who's commenting on the Jedi Paxis leaks that we'll get to after listener feedback this week, he works obviously in production and was providing insight in how these trailers get cut, and said that, Disney, Bad Robot, Lucasfilm, they don't cut their own trailers, at least in his opinion, or based off of what he knows. They farm those out to other sources to put them together and then kind of pick and choose which ones they want to do. And I guess that makes somewhat of sense. I mean, if you're in the middle of working on a film and you have to go and meet a deadline, and there's a company out there that can spend time carefully constructing, trailers and teasers and give you options, then I guess that makes sense. I can only imagine if I were directing a film or making a movie. Well, no, I mean, when I'm writing my EMBARK stories and I have to go and choose a piece of the story to go and put out with a particular outlet, right? A sample of the story, or I have to pick a portion from the book and choose what I want to use for the sample for the audiobook, right? I mean, those things take time, and if you're doing other things with the project, you want to be focused on those other things, and so it makes sense to go and farm it out to another outlet. Okay, so these trailers are still deliberately chosen by the movie studios to convey a certain message, and all the trailers so far have conveyed a message, and it's rung true for the film. And that's the point that I want to get to. And it's rung true for the film. So you go back and you watch that Last Jedi trailer, and it is incredibly open and honest with where this story is going. It's a very intense trailer. It tells you there are stakes here, that this movie is going to go dark. Rey is dealing with issues of how is she going to handle the Force. And then, of course, at the end, you get the I need someone to show me my place in all this, and the outstretched hand of Kylo Ren. And even though those were taken from two different scenes, that is what the story ended up being all about. So when you go and look at the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker, I think that's those same rules apply. Rey is training to be a Jedi and has advanced herself in her skills. We will probably find out how and why she is so powerful in the Force. She is obviously dealing with issues of her past, people saying that they know her, but that nobody does. I think that Rey is going to be dealing with some serious issues about what her parents, or who her parents were, what her lineage actually is, and her part that she plays in this. I also am of the opinion and believe that's going to tie directly into the rest of those movies. And at the same time, there's one person out there, Kylo Ren, who is directly connected with this person, and it's going to be their story in the midst of this resistance having to go and face the ultimate evil and keep it from happening again. And the way that I see this playing out is really fantastic, in my opinion, because we don't necessarily have a situation. Because I was of the opinion that when we got into The Rise of Skywalker, that we would have seen the First Order having spread their tentacles once again throughout the galaxy. And so we're going to be heading into this final film, something more akin to what we saw with Return of the Jedi, where the Empire was already established and was already had its grip over the galaxy, right? And that they were going to have to defeat the First Order, much like they did the Empire. This time around, it doesn't necessarily seem like that's the case. The First Order is still attempting to go and extend its reach, but it hasn't fully done that yet. The galaxy is vulnerable, and the ultimate baddie, who's been with us since the first movie, has a secret Sith army that he's ready to unleash once he's able to regain all of his strength. I mean, imagine that. You're the Resistance, and this Sith armada of Star Destroyers, hundreds of them, are ready to be fired up along with these Sith troopers and just spread across the galaxy with nobody able to stop them. So we're heading into this final movie with the sort of the idea that we have to stop them here before they're completely unleashed. And I'm really, really excited about that story and everything that we've seen about these visuals so far. I guess I can just keep saying it, but I'm really, really, really excited for this film, and excited for it in a way that I think I am more excited than I was the other two movies. You know, I don't know. I guess I never took my pulse rate on the first two to know whether or not I really am more excited, but man, this movie to me is really appealing to me on a level beyond Star Wars, and I guess that's probably what I'm trying to say. Is that there's a story that's embedded in here that I would want to see even if it wasn't Star Wars, where I'll always go see a Star Wars movie regardless of whether or not I'm interested in the story. The story within Solo didn't really interest me all that much, right? I love that movie, but going into it, I was going to see it because it was about Han Solo. It was a Star Wars movie. I wasn't necessarily going in it because of Crimson Dawn or finding out what Solo's name was. No, man, I just wanted to go on a fun adventure, right? It's different for me when it comes to the Rise of Skywalker. All right, one little piece of news came out this week, and that is the Rise of Kylo Ren comic book. The cover has a younger Ben and Luke taking on the Knights of Ren. Ben has been deceived his whole life. So the cover of this shows, just as I mentioned, right, the Knights of Ren, one other Knight of Ren that is carrying a red lightsaber that doesn't look familiar. So there's a lot of speculation that perhaps Kylo Ren ends up killing that one particular Knight of Ren and takes over the Knights of Ren. The description of the comic book and the cover itself raise some questions as to what actually happened at the Jedi Academy, and whether or not these Knights of Ren were students of Luke's. I think that question's been answered. I don't think they were. We know that Luke says he took a handful of students, right, and then left. But the point that I want to zero in on is that it seems as if Kylo Ren, we have another example of Ben Solo being deceived. He's looking for acceptance in somebody. He didn't necessarily want to go train with his uncle Luke, but his parents sent him there. Snoke had been trying to manipulate him since before he was born. And he ended up doing what so many people do when they're searching for something in life and a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. If they're not close with their family, they run to a group of people that will accept them and give them that purpose. And for Kylo Ren, for Ben Solo, that was the dark side. When the original Star Wars came out, and again, I've made this point before, but it's relevant to what we're talking about here, there was a lot of Christian overtones and Christian beliefs that you could layer on top of A New Hope. There were books written on the subject, right? Talking about, how the Force was, like Christianity and there's a higher calling out there. And again, that story and what Lucas did, right, was drawing inspiration from past stories as well. So you've got a lot of mythological tales along with the biblical version of Christianity and Christ and the resurrection and all that, right? And I remember just as a kid growing up and being raised in a staunch Christian household, how there was just a lot of examples of Christianity that were made through Star Wars. And, it was a means to talk to kids and try to get them excited about going to church and reading the Bible by, hey, in Star Wars, they've got the Force and we've got our belief in Jesus. Okay, so why am I bringing up all this religious stuff? Okay. Well, you can believe whatever you want to believe. To each their own. I'm just trying to make a point. I'm bringing all of it up because there's a very similar sort of example and analogy that can be made, a parallel that can be made in what's happened with Ben Solo. And I do believe that Ben Solo, that Kylo Ren is heading for redemption at the end of the Rise of Skywalker. What that means when all is said and done remains to be seen. But you look at a Christian analogy, and again, the sequel trilogy versus the original trilogy, the Force and the influence of the devil. And individuals who have a belief in God and a belief in the Bible, but they have succumbed to sin, and they have been deceived by that sin, and they've been influenced by that sin, and how it's difficult when you get mired in that, when you've been deceived your whole life by thinking that this is the way to go to achieve happiness, for the sake of argument, only to realize that is not the true pathway to happiness, and there is a pathway to salvation and real, true happiness, right? That peace that surpasses all understanding. And I'm really starting to see that in this Kylo Ren character. When you look at what they did with Ben Solo throughout the films, when you look at what they've done with Ben Solo throughout the ancillary material, when we see some of the lead-up material so far, especially with this Rise of Kylo Ren comic book, showing that he, again, is searching for some meaning and purpose, thought he was deceived by Luke Skywalker, not realizing what was actually taking place, and Luke, in his moment of weakness, wasn't really going to strike him down. He thought better of it at the last moment, but Ben Solo didn't see that, just saw that his master turned on him. The story group, the content creators, Lucasfilm, have really set up this sympathetic villain character. And I get why there's many individuals out there that don't want Reylo. I get why there's people out there that don't want redemption. I get why there's people out there that think that Ben Solo is going to die. I understand all that, and some of that might actually come and happen. But it seems really clear to me that we are looking at a character whose arc is coming to the light through this girl that he has the connection with after being deceived his whole life. And I think that really plays into this idea of the Rise of Skywalker name as well. Even if for some reason they're able, or for some way they're able to pull off a Ben Demption, but unfortunately Ben doesn't make it through the end of the film, right? I don't want to see that happen personally. Okay. I think it might be a mistake if that happened, but honestly, I can't render judgment until I see the final product of what it is that they're creating to know whether or not it worked or doesn't work if they do end up killing Ben at the end of this movie. What is clear to me, though, is that his arc is leaning now towards him being redeemed, and they've been setting that up all the way. And it's interesting, too, because I think with Rey, the way that they've set Rey up, too, and not giving her not giving her parents that carry some major weight and significance yet, keeping her at the moment as a nobody. And even if some of the rumors are true of who she is related to, she really still is an isolated character. The only person in these films and in these stories that she can really truly go and relate to is Kylo Ren because of that connection. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do with that. How are they going to be facing off? What are those fights going to be? What's the end goal? When's the turnaround going to come? How is Rey looking at this individual? Is she looking at him as a villain or a broken man who's in desperate need of turning things around? They've always shown that compassion in Rey throughout all of these stories. And one more quick point, and then we're going to go into listener feedback. Like I said, the majority of the show this week is going to be listener feedback. I didn't have a ton of news to share. I just wanted to continue down this road of my thoughts of where this story is going and just share my excitement. Man, I'm so jacked for this movie. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that trailer. And that trailer is really good, too. It grows on you. That's why I like it. That trailer is not your pop single release best song on the album. It's awesome the first time you watch it and the first maybe 5 times you watch it, but it loses momentum. No, that Rise of Skywalker trailer gets better and better and better every time I see it. And the more that I see the shots and what it is they're trying to convey, it's just epic shot after epic shot after epic shot. I mean, a D-Day invasion on a Star Destroyer in the upper atmosphere with Orbak horse-like creatures, with First Order probably filled with red Sith Trooper transports descending down from an old original trilogy era Star Destroyer with hundreds of other original trilogy era Star Destroyers in the background, in the middle of when most likely Rey is going to have to be facing off against Palpatine. I mean, give me a break already. Give it to me now. The shot of the Star Destroyer coming up out of the ice or whatever, terrain that is just absolutely stunning. And we get to have Reylo fun all in the middle of it. I love the fact they brought back Palpatine, too. I really do. Going back and watching some of the older films, like I have been, and again, Revenge of the Sith tonight, knowing what I know about the story, and I'm fine knowing more than I probably should know about the story, but just knowing that Palpatine's been in the background all along just ramps everything up, raises the stakes, and connects all these films. And again, we don't get to have our Reylo fun in The Rise of Skywalker if not for The Last Jedi. And I really do believe that the scope of The Rise of Skywalker is going to highlight the brilliance of The Last Jedi, in my opinion. We're going to end up with 3 very powerful yet unique films. I really believe that at the end of the day, history is going to look at Disney and what they did with these 3 movies, and they're going to look on it really kindly. J.J. Abrams brought this amazing Force Awakens film that was just another fun adventure. Because that's what A New Hope is. It's funny, you go back and you watch A New Hope, and it sets the stage for everything, but it really is just a straightforward, simple, just fun adventure movie. And it just works so well. Something that I was trying to convey in the first book that I wrote, but it's a book, so it's big, and it's got a lot of exposition in it, probably too much exposition, but once you get past the first third of the book, it really starts moving. But I wanted to create a story that was just simple to follow. Here's your group of reluctant heroes thrust into this situation. Here are the bad guys. This is what their goal is, and this is how the good guys can stop them. And that's what A New Hope is. And that's kind of what The Force Awakens is, except The Force Awakens has this delicate genius embedded in it of these 2 dual protagonists. And I thought I think that was just a really smart move of bookending these 3 trilogies together with another story of a boy and a girl, and potentially, don't really know how far down the road it's going to go, but potentially doing sort of a reverse Amidala from the prequel trilogy. And it's enhanced my viewing of the prequel trilogy, having watched The Phantom Menace and especially Attack of the Clones and going into Revenge of the Sith tonight. I'm finding myself really enjoying that love story between Anakin and Padme, for as clunky and teenagery as the language can be. I really find myself being emotionally sucked into those 2 characters and what they are going through. And again, that large scope of The Rise of Skywalker, when you take everything in totality, to me is really going to shine a spotlight on the uniqueness of what Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi. That was a bold move by Rian Johnson to go and set the movie right after the first movie. It was a bold move of Kathleen Kennedy to trust Rian Johnson to do that. Because you're limited in doing that. Starting the movie right after the end of the other movie it's difficult to sort of raise the scope because we're kind of in a transition, right? This middle act is kind of the transition to where we're heading, in the finale. When you're looking at a trilogy, and what Rian Johnson was able to do in bringing all these different elements into this very personal story, but still giving it this grand scope and some amazing set pieces, is just incredible. And again, when The Rise of Skywalker comes out and we see this epic, massive film that is probably going to look like, in terms of density, more like the prequels than it did any of the original trilogy movies, and it's totally okay that it does that, and that's why I'm excited. And that's what I believe J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio knew, is they knew, man, we can pull out all the stops in this movie because we don't have to outdo ourselves again. You're not looking at a situation of like Rogue One where, well, we can't make that battle over Creighton space too great because we have other ones we have to do. And, Rian Johnson taking some pretty bold moves in crafting a story that had some very similar elements to Return of the Jedi, and getting rid of that, spoiler alert, villain character to set up this next movie. They were all very bold moves, but brilliant moves, in my opinion, and really did create a scenario for this movie we're all going to watch here in a couple of weeks. Well, 2 months, but still, right? It's just a couple of weeks when you really think about it. All right. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on YouTube as well. Let's go ahead and dive into, there's a lot of it, your listener feedback this week.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right. First comment comes from Barmag. Says this: I envy your optimism, John. I have lost hope. This trilogy is the Rey trilogy, and not the Skywalker trilogy. Ben Solo didn't even have 20 minutes of screen time in TFA, less than in TLJ. And from the leaks, or even the D23 teaser, or today, we see Rey the most. I just wish Disney had been more honest right from the start, saying this is the story of an orphan in the Skywalker universe without said Skywalkers being the protagonists. I think Rey would have been better accepted as the heroine. Here, by presenting this trilogy as a sequel to the previous movies, but having The Last Sky have so little time on screen and everything revolving around Rey, it just makes fans angry that a non-Sky gets everything Sky related, plus all the screen time. I wish I didn't feel that way, but the last leaks have really broken my trust. I wish those leaks were fake leaks organized by Disney, but I've been through leaks with the last Harry Potter novel, and they ended up being true. I don't have much hope that this movie will be about the Skywalkers. For Abrams, a cohesive ending to the 9 films is Palpatine, not Ben Solo, fighting the enemy of his family. If I'm wrong, then it appears that Abrams went all crazy and he gives us a Ben Solo who had gone undercover with the First Order because he'd been warned by Anakin that Palpatine was alive and that it was his duty to kill him for good, and that Ben was lost. Ben Solo lost his way during his time undercover, and Rey appeared at the right time to remind him that he is from the light side. Fine, I'll recognize my mistake. But as I said, I have lost hope. But I have no problem with you being so positive and excited about these movies. I find it great that you love Star Wars, even if I have lost this love. Well, I appreciate your honesty, Barmag, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, and you were incredibly respectful in laying out your criticism. And look, I disagree. And not everybody watches, and I'm not saying that you did or didn't. I'm just saying this isn't necessarily public knowledge. But, J.J. Abrams was up front from the get-go, and all of the behind-the-scenes footage and the documentary footage about what this story was about, and that we were going to be bringing back the original trilogy characters, but it really was about these new characters. And I never had an issue with that. As I've said from the beginning, if Luke, Han, and Leia weren't in the sequel trilogy, I would have been fine with that. We had our time with them in the original trilogy, and I thought that they handled them well in this sequel trilogy. I didn't personally need the story to be about the Skywalkers directly, even though they kind of are. This is all about, and has been all about, passing the torch, and I feel like they've done that really well. And at the end of the day, they've passed the torch, and it's going to be the legacy of the Skywalkers, the training of Skywalker, that ends up ending this 9-story arc and defeating the villain for good. So, but again, to each their own, and I appreciate your honesty and your candor and how respectful you were. All right, let's go here. A friend of the show, Tim, says this. As always, love the show, John. Thanks, Tim. Your weekly dose of Star Wars exuberance is something I await showing up in my podcast player. I am a voracious reader of sci-fi and fantasy. Have you been following the character of Grand Admiral Thrawn? Just through Rebels. I'm reading the new Thrawn books that are canon and would be interested in your take of him. He is now a flat-out evil character, but a military genius who sees the Empire as the best peaceful option for the galaxy. I hope to see the awesomeness of the new trailer Monday night and cannot wait for your commentary on it. As far as the Rise of Skywalker goes, I hope for great fight scenes and the put down of evil at long last. I don't think Kylo will pull a Snape. He was good all along. But redemption can and should happen as long as consequences are still valid. And if you look back on Star Wars history, love between unlikely parties is marbled throughout the canon. Han and Leia, Anakin and Padme, Satine and Obi-Wan. Many times people who don't agree to begin with find deep love. I really appreciate what you said about the complexities of relationships. Unfortunately, in our 3-second modern attention span, we often don't want to take the time to let a great romance develop. Just like in Pride and Prejudice, what's instantaneous doesn't last, but what's fought through is far more permanent. As a married man of 11 plus years, I can tell you that what's easy and quick often leads to disaster. Amen to that. And what's tough and fought for and worked through is far greater. Just saw the trailer. Got a couple of emails from Tim. I put them all together. It was all I wanted and more. It was so over the top, deep, and revealing, and yet it didn't give me too much of the story. First impression, I cannot wait to see the absolute scale of this movie. It's going to be so huge, of course, they need 2.5 hours to cover it. The massive fleet, the Star Destroyers, the creepy demon throne, the Edge of Palpatine, seemingly wearing some sort of machine to keep him alive, but oh so evil. Kylo and Rey smashing whatever that statue thing is together. Yeah, that's the, it's funny, that shot is the helmet, is Darth Vader's charred helmet on a stand. If you watch the last second of the fade before it cuts to the next scene, you can see the helmeted Kylo Ren reach out with his hand to stop the helmet from falling with the Force. Go watch the trailer again. It's pretty cool. Let's see. I lost my spot here. I want all of this. Is going to be complete old and new and finish the saga so well. I feel like I did when I first saw the Lord of the Rings movie. There you go. I read the books at least once a year for the past 20 years. That finally, that leaves you sad but also hopeful is what I want. I hope they tie up and nail. I hope they tie everything up well and nail the ending. Question: I have a friend mention that both Han Solo and Leia's voices at the end of the trailer referencing Rey. I didn't get that. Any ideas? No. Thanks, Tim. As always, friend of the show. No, that was Luke and Leia. That was Luke and Leia saying, "May the Force be with you." Always there at the end of the trailer. All right, friend of the show, Melissa's got a lot to say. Actually, no, I forgot. I grabbed onto one specific one from Miranda, not Melinda. I got my wife confused there. Miranda writes this. Let's see. I want to make a comment, and this time it's about the casuals. I'm in the same boat with you when it comes to Marvel. Casuals to me are just people that want to spend a part of their day spending a few hours at the movies and just see it for what it is. There are some movie buffs. Some make amazing video essays about them, but then move on to the next thing on their channels. Houston Productions 1, Captain Midnight, Lessons from the Screenplay are great examples of that. And I have some further thoughts from Miranda that I'll be sharing with on next week's show. A couple of emails came in late and didn't make it onto the list this week. All right. Agnes, friend of the show, says this. I just wanted to react to people when they say that Rey and Kylo's relationship is a bad message for girls. Here we go. My almost 6-year-old daughter loves Return of the Jedi. What she loves about it is the scene of Leia pressed into Jabba's belly. I thought it was weird and wrong, but she explained it to me that she just liked Jabba. he is her favorite character because he feels soft. Ugh. Now, him and, oh gosh, what was his, oh, I wish I could find the clip. I knew I have it. No, I used to have it. I just went and looked for it. Diego Luna talking about how much he likes Jabba. I like Jabba. He just can push his belly. I like Jabba. And then she loves the scene in which Leia kills him with her chain. Okay, so far so good. Now, please, anyone there can explain how this plays out in her head and what message she gets from this movie. A message might be one, but in the end, how girls read the message depends on their upbringing and social context they grew up in. In the case of my daughter, I think she does not think of Jabba as harassing Leia because of misogyny and harassment are not in her life. Anywhere. We live in Quebec, and the culture here is light years post the Me Too movement. She always sees Leia as a superior character to Jabba, so how can she ever be harassed? In her eyes, Leia lets Jabba chain her up to help Luke and then kills him when he's no longer needed. You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Agnes, because that's the same way that I looked at that whole scene and those characters as well. I'm right there with you. For Kylo and Rey, I had to explain the complexity of the character interaction to my daughter because I find that the new trilogy is too difficult for small kids. In short, she thinks Kylo is okay and can be the love interest of Rey because his mom loves him and he loves his mom. A person cannot really be bad if they still feel love. Still, she is absolutely in agreement with Rey on shutting the door on him until he is nicer. So I guess she's right. No talk about Rey saving the bad boy, rather talk about Rey not even considering the guy until he gets his act together, and even then, she will think about it a bit longer. That's it for girls and messaging. Thank you for your enthusiasm about the trailer. I guess I'm not that real core Star Wars fan because it left me clueless and largely unimpressed. Okay, I don't care for battles and ships that much. The scene with the horses brings to mind the ridiculed efforts of Polish and French army against the Nazi tanks at the beginning of World War II, so for me, it was actually quite embarrassing to see. I don't think any European filmmaker would have ever come up with an image like this. We all know from history how ridiculous and useless that is. Well, think about Native Americans on horses. It's painful. Minus Little Bighorn, of course. On a positive note, that look on Rey's face at the end, she looked like this only once before, and that was when Ben killed Snoke. Yes, it was. She is happy and relieved. So we know he took his decision. And he comes back to help her. AT-AT chat correctly deciphered the voices at the end as Han, Luke, and Leia. Interesting. They are talking while Rey looks happy at Ben. So I understand they talked to him, the last Skywalker. Pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that was Han. I'll have to go back and listen to. I thought it was just, well, you know what? I can actually do it right here. Let me pull it back up. I'll do a quick cue in here. I should get it right at the end. And let me see if I can hear Han at the end of the trailer.
Confronting fear is
That's
the
Luke.
destiny of a Jedi.
This is actually an edit, by the way.
Your destiny.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
You know, I only hear Luke and Leia.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
Unless that's Han saying the Force, and then Luke says we'll be with you.
The Force will be with you.
Always.
I'll have to go check out that AT-AT chat video. Thank you, as always. Cheers, Agnes. Thank you, Agnes. I always appreciate your comments, and that was a really good perspective with your daughter as well. We need that on this show. All right, let's move on. All right, Purple Flower writes in, I've been listening for several months now, and I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you, Purple. I became a Star Wars fan when I was around 9 years old and The Phantom Menace came out. I consider myself a casual fan, even though I listen to some Star Wars-related podcasts. There are only 2 Star Wars films that I've seen in theaters, and they were Attack of the Clones and The Force Awakens. For some reason, I was not into TFA as much as I was into the prequel trilogy. This changed when TLJ came out. I had only seen TFA twice prior to watching The Last Jedi. I thought it was a good movie. Once I saw TLJ, it just drew me in. There was just something about the Kylo Ren and Rey connection that made the sequel trilogy more interesting. Needless to say, I had to make sure that I wasn't the only one who saw a romantic-type connection between Rey and Kylo. Because for a second, I thought Rey was going to kiss Kylo in the elevator. So I went to Google and discovered The Wonderful World of Reylo. I don't know how this movie is going to play out. All I know is that all of these magazines covers feature the two young Force users. So that must mean something, right? If the final film was only about the dark versus the light, why not feature all of the heroes versus all of the villains? Anyway, I'm so excited. The movie premieres on my birthday, and I know it's going to be fantastic. I do want to know if you plan to compare the trailer to the trailer leaks that came out a couple of weeks ago. I'm very curious to see how true these leaks were. If you are, will you also do the same for once the film comes out? Well, the trailer description that we had a couple of weeks back was obviously completely wrong because that person lied about when the trailer was supposed to drop and their description was completely off. When it comes to the description of the trailers that Jason Ward put out, there was some details in it that fit, but for the most part, it was completely different. Now, I still very much trust Jason Ward and his spoilers and his sources. He mentioned that it was the beginning of the trailer that was specifically different. The beginning of the trailer that he saw focused directly on Kylo Ren arriving on what was most likely the location where Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, was. And it was clear that, at least in my opinion, and Jason put out a video recently talking about this, that would have been a much darker trailer for the final trailer. I'm wondering if that particular scene, which has been talked about not just by Jason Ward, but also Jedi Paxis, I'm wondering if that trailer might not be the trailer that we end up getting for the international trailer. And that's the thing that I didn't talk about earlier in the show, and the fact that the international trailer often certainly was the case for The Force Awakens, less so for The Last Jedi, but the international trailer usually is quite a bit different than the U.S. trailer. And we usually get it about a week after the final trailer drops. So I imagine we'll be getting the international trailer within the next week. And I can't help but wonder if that international trailer will end up having, will end up being the version that is a little bit closer to what MakingStarWars.net Jason Ward said it was going to be. And he even mentioned in the video, and I can't remember exactly what his rationale was, but was that when it comes to European audiences, they may be leaning more towards the darker theme than it was the U.S. audience. You know, the thing about that U.S. trailer, too, and we're going to continue to talk about this as we work through your listener feedback, but the end of that trailer is very much the end of that movie, in my opinion. Those last couple of shots of that beat-up-looking Kylo Ren with the lightning going off in the background, Rey stepping back from Palpatine, and then Rey looking at the camera, and you can just see the slightest crack of a smile there. To me, that is we're looking at some of the final, at least the final shots of the confrontation. I think one of the reasons why this movie is going to be so long is going back to my Lord of the Rings example, especially Return of the King, is this is not going to be a film where we can wrap up with the grand finale and then iris out to directed by J.J. Abrams. No, they're going to need to ramp this movie down on screen and put everybody in their final places, right? We're going to have to, at least in my opinion, we're going to need to see where everybody's going to end up when this whole thing is said and done. So, again, back to Purple, going all the way around. Some of those leaks were completely wrong. Jason Ward had a little bit of it right, but still the core of it was wrong, and we'll see whether or not that ends up actually in the trailer when we get the international trailer. I do fully expect to see that footage in the movie itself. All right, next listener feedback comes from Mike and says this. Hello, Mr. Justice. This trailer does a fantastic job of giving the fans hope for our heroes, but enough of the ominous return of Palpatine to instill some anxiety that we just need more. I can neither confirm nor deny C-3PO's spot and dialogue looking at the sequel trilogy heroes cuts with R2-D2 and Chewie produced a bit of a tear. I wholeheartedly agree that the shot with the Falcon entering the screen with the hordes of starships behind had a huge impact. It made a 33-year-old man feel like he was back in the theater for the special editions of the films as a kid. I wonder if this scene comes after the D-23 clip of the Falcon coming out of hyperspace with an assortment of other ships, maybe with Lando bringing it back from Pisana. Last thing, I've heard a lot of speculation of the jungle scenes taking place on Endor, but the recently released Monopoly, Star Wars The Complete Saga Edition, it appears to be a new planet, Agent Kloss. Just thought I'd throw that in. Thanks for all you do. My fiancé, by the way, and myself and some family and friends will be attending the 6 p.m. Arbor Lakes IMAX showing on opening night with you. Listen for our cheers. Yeah, we're going to that same one, Mike, and really, really excited about that. Just I'm going to throw something out there. There was this, and there continues to be this rumor going around about George Lucas and what can be, what they have to pay Lucas for and what they don't have to pay Lucas for, right? And there was this rumor going around that when it comes to a bunch of the original trilogy characters and planets and locations and such, that if they use them, then George gets a certain percentage of the profits. He gets a cut. And I never put a lot of stock into it, but isn't it interesting, though, that we're getting all these planets that should easily be certain locations within the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, and yet we keep naming them? I mean, if those rights extend to the names of planets, Endor and Yavin, sure, we did have Yavin in Rogue One, but at the same time, all the other planets were new. We are assuming it's going to be Tatooine and the Mandalorian, but are they ever going to go and address that? Kef Burr is apparently the planet that the Death Star wreckage falls on, so where is that located? Is it one of the other moons of Endor? And if the beginning is this Agent Cross, then AJAN, again, I wonder why not just make it Yavin? The truth is, we'll probably never find out if those rumors are true or not, so it's neither here nor there. Just wanted to point out that observation. All right, Across the Stars says this. People are saying the white ship they're on when they destroy Vader's helmet is actually Kylo's Ravenger ship. Yeah, I heard that afterwards, too. I love that it's all white. I think that's significant with his personality change. The trailer was just beautiful, and we got more Reylo than I thought we were going to get. And nothing could have been better than the But I Do. It was just perfect. Chef's kiss. Great breakdown, John. Thanks, Across the Stars. All right, Paula writes this. I watched the Rise of Skywalker trailer, and my reaction was, in a word, overwhelmed. I sat through it twice and was captivated by the saga's overall theme of hope that was manifested significantly in it, as well as receiving a glimpse of the deep connection between Ben and Rey. It was very powerful, and I cried all the way through both viewings. I admit I am a huge proponent of Reylo. I've been a fan of Star Wars since it came out back in 1977 during my second year of college. Since then, it's continued to impact my life, and the sequel trilogy has touched me in ways I never imagined. The character development has always been phenomenal, and like you, it's inspired me to delve into the realm of science fiction writing, a new journey for me. Thank you for sharing your deep insight of the Star Wars universe with us. I love your podcast, and I wish you the best always. Paula, P.S. I have both of your books. Thank you so much, Paula. Yeah, man, all this Star Wars has been so inspirational as of late. I'm working on the third book in the trilogy, which might get a name change, by the way. The working title has been The Vanishing War for quite a long time, but I might actually change the name of it now that the book is really, truly forming. But it's been such an inspiration in all of this creative content, and the new footage and the information we're finding out about this movie has really, really has really inspired me, and I hope that ends up showing in the third book of my series. All right, friend of the show, Shlomo says this. Well, last week I was admitted to Rambon Hospital in Haifa due to an infection in my leg. All week my monitor readouts were low pulse, low blood pressure, low everything. too painful to work or move, and too miserable to enjoy anything. My laptop and I awaited the one thing that might bring some relief. The Monday American football game didn't reach its halftime until 4 a.m. here. As the trailer started, I actually endured some pain to sit up a little in bed. The lights, the sounds, the amazing things. As it ended, I whispered out loud, Mitsuyan. That is excellent, with my hands raised in triumph. If I said that wrong, I apologize. At the exact same time that the nurse burst into the room, my vitals had spiked with my pulse over 130. My BP was normal, and the rapid change alerted the night nurse. She was a spoil sport and didn't want to watch it again with me, muttered something about crazy people as crazy people, and then stormed off to wherever they keep the night nurses when not in use. I watched it over and over until John's podcast was posted. Despite my leg looking like melted pizza and the incredible amount of pain, it was a good night. I am the only person who actually had their reaction to the trailer biometrically monitor Shlomo. Oh, man. I'm sorry, Shlomo. My prayers go out to you, and I hope that you're doing better. Thank you so much for writing in, though, man. I really, really do appreciate it, and I hope you get well soon. All right, The Color of Caramel. Let's got some lengthy comments. Let's dive into them. No offense, John, but I feel kind of cheated with this sequel trilogy simply because of the fact I feel like I don't really know Rey, Finn, Kylo Ren, and even Poe. First off, you don't got to, I'm not going to take offense. I didn't make the movies. I just love them. So, but thank you, Color of Caramel, for being respectful. When the first two movies came out, it felt more of a vehicle for the original trilogy characters. I understand where we were going full circle, but here we are with the last movie. But when I sit and think about it, what do I know about the Fab Four? Absolutely nothing. And that's where I think some of the hardcore protesting from fans is coming from, especially concerning Rey. Now, I know the party line is for most people, I don't care about the lineage, but if this was a mystery drama or even a comedy movie, something would be mentioned about a character's backstory, or said in an offhanded way about why a character does what they do and how. It's part of storytelling. With that said, I wish JJ and the rest of the cast could have come back to do a proper trilogy that focuses just on Rey, Ben, Finn, and Poe, if he doesn't die in this last movie. The same way the original trilogy was about Luke, Han, and Leia, and the prequel trilogy was focused on Obi-Wan and Anakin. I feel like there is more story and adventure to be told through the new characters. Again, it's going to be one of those moments where I respectfully disagree. And I'm going to respectfully disagree, not because your comments are wrong, right? There's truth to those comments. I'm not going to push back on that. But I am going to say it is subjective, and comparing the buildup of these characters and the backstory of these characters, especially to the original trilogy, there wasn't a lot of backstory there either. I mean, we didn't learn a ton about the background of our main three in the original trilogy. Now, granted, right, you could say, well, if I had seen the original trilogy and I was older, I probably would have been bothered by that too, but it was a kid's movie, so you didn't really have to do that. So it really just comes down to personal preference. For me, I've got enough backstory on them. Rey is obviously a mystery, so that needs to be a mystery until they reveal what her background is in this movie coming out here in 2 months. Finn, we know, was taken at a young age, right? And forced into servitude in the First Order. Poe, from some ancillary release material, we know about his family and where he grew up, even though we don't know a ton about him in the movie. So again, it's all a matter of personal opinion and what people want, and so you're certainly entitled to it. But for me, I'm fine with what we've been given of these particular characters. All right, Color of Caramel goes on. About the trailer, I love this third trailer more than the second one. Like you, I'm all about cinematography, and I love good use of time in scenes, which is why I liked how Ryan used the passage of time on Ahch-To in The Last Jedi. So I know JJ is going to deliver this movie from the beautiful scenes, going to deliver in this movie from the beautiful scenes I saw. But if you saw his Star Trek movies, the cinematography was on point in those too. Now, John, as much as you keep going on about the details, I'm surprised you missed the tiny detail about Rey's lightsaber. When she was standing on the Death Star and the water is sizzling off the blade, now that's a meticulous detail. Anyway, I think you're right about the coolness of Rey and Kylo destroying what looked like the imagery of Vader. Though it would have been poetic if Kylo had destroyed it alone, so he could move on from his irrational appreciation of trying to live up to the Death Star's legacy. Plus, it will do good in theaters simply because the majority of audiences do not live on social media trying to find every little detail about this trilogy. That's why the original trilogy remains a favorite, with no negative comments to be found. There was no online social media back then. You're 100% right. Color of Caramel. That's why the original trilogy remains a favorite, with no negative comments to be found. Again, finally, I'm not going to overthink this movie. Other people are doing enough of that already. I'm going to enjoy it. It looks like a true Star Wars movie, complete with saber duels, space battles, the camaraderie, and epic fight against the real bad guy. On a side note, go ahead and do your space battle in your book. After all, space battles are not a new concept, whether in books or movies. So if it fits the story, go ahead. All right, I got a couple of different things I need to dive into because there's some good nuggets in here. First off, we'll start where you ended. I'm still going to do that. I mentioned on the other show that seeing that shot of all those ships was something that I dreamed of and actually had planned on putting in my book. And I'm doing a version of that, just not exactly that. It's funny, though, because I was watching Revenge of the Sith, and I've actually recorded this over 2 days, by the way. My voice totally cracked right there, too. Wow. I was watching Revenge of the Sith, and that opening battle sequence over Coruscant is pretty dense. It's pretty darn epic in terms of the amount of ships that are packed into that shot. I think we become accustomed to it after seeing these over and over again. It loses the impact. I remember when I first saw the teaser trailer that November of 2014, when they gave those real quick few clips of The Force Awakens, the first footage we ever saw. And there was that shot, that final shot of the Millennium Falcon doing the spin in the air and then coming back down over the sands of Jakku with the two TIE fighters flying by, and thinking, oh my gosh, we've never seen a shot like that of the Millennium Falcon before. That was amazing. Well, truth be told, we had. The effects weren't nearly as good as they are now, obviously, but we've seen the Millennium Falcon do acrobatic moves very similar to what we saw in the trailer, but again, you just become accustomed to it. Now, granted, what I've seen of this space battle in the Rise of Skywalker certainly is much bigger than anything that we've seen before, even though we have seen some major space battles prior. Even watching the final battle of Endor in Return of the Jedi, they tried to pack a lot in that particular scene, as much as they could using practical effects. So it's a little unfair, in my opinion, to say that we've never done this before. This movie, though, The Rise of Skywalker, clearly looks like it's going to be doing it at a much, much bigger scale. All right, going back to the water sizzling off the blade. Okay, I didn't notice that. I'm going to go back and watch it now. However, it's interesting because the first time we ever saw that was in the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars micro-series they put out that is no longer canon. I've talked about it before. If you watch both the discs of Season 1 and 2, it's about 2 hours worth of content, and it runs you right into the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. I love those cartoons, even though they're not canon. The 2D animation in it is really, really interesting, and the storytelling is fantastic. Genndy Tartakovsky actually, really got the Star Wars aesthetic down, and there's some amazing shots, and there's a shot of Anakin when he's fighting Asajj Ventress, and he's standing there on, I think they actually were on Yavin, if I'm not mistaken. But he's standing there in the rain, and the raindrops begin to fall on the blade, and they sizzle. So that's the first time that we saw that. Now I got to go back and watch the Rise of Skywalker teaser. Rey and Kylo destroying the helmet. Mentioned it earlier. Watch the final part of that shot before the fade. It looks like Kylo's reaching out with his hand to stop the mask from falling. And if you go back and watch those other trailers for the other sequel trilogy movies, and I have some comments about this from somebody who's working on these films but remaining anonymous, and I'll talk about it when we get to the spoiler section after listener feedback. But their comment, and this is what we'll get into, is that all these trailers are very specific. I think a lot of these shots are pivotal key moments in the film. Obviously, that should be, I guess that's kind of a given, but I think sometimes we don't think about it. I think there's something to Kylo Ren trying to stop the helmet from falling. Certainly that final shot of the trailer is a major moment in the movie of the camera just focusing in on Rey's face when she cracks that smile when she cracks that smile right there at the end of the trailer as well. Let's see. Is that all? Yeah, I think that's all for Color of Caramel. All right, let's move on. Patrick writes this. Longtime listener, first-time emailer. I have to say, having watched all the trailers they have put out for the Rise of Skywalker, I find it interesting that none of them had Zori Bliss in them, and all we've seen of her is in the posters. She is in one shot. She is in the C-3PO shot in the final trailer. We just don't see her in action yet. Think she has something interesting they're keeping from us fans, maybe as has been discussed, something to do with Rey. I also have a very strong feeling that most of this footage takes place early in the film, other than the space battle moments, which will probably occur at the end. Either way, all of this footage and conversations I have with you while listening to your podcast keep me going, and even more excited for this movie and conclusion to this great new trilogy and saga. Keep up the good work, and may the Force be with you, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I tend to agree. I think a lot of what we're seeing in the trailer is from the beginning part of the film. And they're keeping a lot secret. We still haven't seen any of the Knights of Ren in action. We still haven't seen the Sith Troopers yet. Zori Bliss is on the poster. She's obviously going to be playing a pretty major role. So they're giving us just enough to get excited about this movie. And I'm okay with all that. All right. Let's see. Oh, hey, my dad wrote me. Hi, son. We're so excited for our trip to you guys. Watched the trailer several times. Also watched A New Hope last night. Finished the prequels in Rogue One, and now we're working through the rest next. Yeah, my dad is coming out for this final movie. I mentioned that earlier. Really excited about that. It only seems fitting that the man who introduced me to Star Wars when I was 5 and took me to go see it in the theater when it was originally released is here with me to see the close of this saga. All right. Temas Row S says this, and I love this comment, by the way. You're such a nerd, John! ! Thank you. I always listen to your podcast while taking a bath and playing with my Star Wars action figures in the hot water. Your voice and optimism make me laugh like nothing else in the world. You are so completely over the top. That's why I love your podcast. Thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. All right. The Wall Cometh writes this. John, I really liked your review. Please consider adding some videos to your future reviews, as it does help me follow along and visualize what you are referring to. Please take this as constructive criticism, not a negative comment. Not taking it as negative. Again, keep up the great work. It's super appreciated. I may be doing a video version of what you see on YouTube. I'm actually staring at a brand new web camera right here where I sit. My biggest hurdle right now is the lighting. I'm trying to get the lighting right, and it's really becoming a daunting task. But I had talked about this, I guess, probably about a year ago, and a lot of people misunderstood what I was saying and thought that I was going to be doing the show live. That's not my intention. What I may do, though, is I may do the exact same show we're doing now, but I'm also going to do a video version that I'll record while I'm doing the show. And that version will be the version that goes up on YouTube. So you may actually be seeing my big old round smiling face in the near future. And depending on how labor-intensive it is, I may be adding some elements to it. The podcast has been going really well. I get a lot of views on YouTube, but I think if I add in that visual element, that we can get some more. So, and I would like to know your thoughts on that. Again, it would be released exactly the same way it is now, right? It's all the same platforms. None of the content changes at all, but there would be a produced video version on YouTube that you could watch if you wanted to. Curious to get your thoughts if that's something that you'd be into or not. Drop me, again, an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Let me know what you think, but I am working towards that. Again, like I said, I'm staring right now at a brand new web camera. All right, Rose writes this. Hope you're doing well. Thanks, Rose. I hope you're doing well, too. Guess what? I'm not sure if I really liked the latest trailer. I missed some first or last minute surprise. I really enjoyed the first teaser trailer with Rey jumping over the air and Dark Rey in the second teaser. For this one, I missed some kind of open mouth feeling, plus some more Reylo. I hope all remaining surprises will be in the movie itself. I do think the movie will be great, however, and all this top secret plot from Disney might have taken me in a bad way. Thank you once again for the for your keeping positive in all of your podcasts, Rose. Thanks, Rose. I was a little bit surprised too that in this particular trailer we didn't get a whoa moment, but we're going to be getting a lot of TV spots, and we're still going to be getting that international trailer. I think they're holding off on some wow moments to be released in some smaller spots. This trailer was really effective, and again, it grows on you, in my opinion, which makes for a stronger piece of content than something that's just easily digestible but quickly forgotten. All right, Severin writes this. A lot of Star Wars podcasters who used to be gung-ho into the leaks for The Rise of Skywalker earlier this year have sworn off all of anything having to do with potential plot and image leaks for the sake of going in fresh to the movie in 2 months. I have no problem with this whatsoever and completely respect their decision to not discuss anything having to do with potential spoilers leading up to the 19th. I myself do not actually actively seek out spoilers, but I don't run away from them if I'm confronted by them by accident. However, now I feel lost because these sources used to go to for discussion and evaluation are now shut down to spoilers until further notice. Are the leaks real or fake? Diversions from Disney itself for keeping us off their trail? I don't know anymore. I miss my speculation sessions. The most recent image leaks I accidentally saw that originated on YouTube are so nutsoid I don't know who to talk to about it, and I'm having trouble containing my nervous excitement. So if you happen to know what leaks I'm referencing, I do, and cover them on your show in the future, I will later on. I just wanted to let you know I'm all ears and fine with discussing / speculating over leaks myself, especially when I come across them completely by accident, but I respect your stance on spoilers if you have decided to bypass them as well. Thanks always for having a professional, informed, and fun show. Can't wait for this weekend's. So again, we're going to get into this at the other part at the end of the show this week. And coming up here, I got a couple more comments we need to get through. We'll talk a little bit more about what the leaks are and what they aren't, and what I think is really happening with these leaks. The photos that got released, those are apparently legitimate, and they do not line up with the leaks in and of themselves. I do think that it's the connective thread in these particular leaks that's providing the improper context to what's really happening with these. I think the majority of the leaks, especially by Jedi Paxos, are right, but I do think there's some details that have not been released yet. I know for me personally, that's kind of where I stand on it now, is that I know the gist of what's going to happen in the story. I know some of the major story beats, but I'm kind of stepping back a little bit because with us being so close to the movie's release, I'm totally fine with letting a few of these things sort of play out on screen, even though I know the gist of what's going to happen. But again, we'll get into a little bit more of this in just a few minutes. I do want to get through a few more listener emails. Miranda's back, and she said this. For the last 5.5 days, there's been so much about this trailer that I continue to highlight and talk about amongst my fellow peers on multiple YouTube channels for my favorites, including this. To sum up, it's as epic as it is emotional and enduring and, well, let's just say memorable and yet still mysterious. Late last night on Friday, I actually started to watch the old trailers of The Force Awakens. It's making me realize how far we've come and how much time has passed. It's already making me feel nostalgic. And in a couple of decades, the kids that are growing up with these movies are now going to be nostalgic for the sequel trilogy. And I think there's going to be so much to analyze and study once it does come to an end. It'll be that much easier to talk about it without speculating or not knowing what's ahead. Thank you, Miranda, as always. A friend of the show, Anthea Gaia, says this. I thought the trailer was beautiful. The music was incredible, and it was so hopeful and uplifting. I love the part where Rey said no one really knows her, and Ben responded with, but I do. My Reylo heart was so pleased that we will get more Reylo in this movie. Also, the Pride and Prejudice references are so blatant, I almost couldn't believe it. The part where Rey and Ben destroy what I think is Vader's mask was epic. Do you think maybe that is... maybe the part at the end where Rey is holding her lightsaber and smiles is where Ben comes to help her fight Palpatine. Yes. I sure hope so. It is. That's my guess. I also noticed that Ben does not have his lightsaber ignited when he and Rey are facing each other in the Emperor's throne room. Yep. Do you think this shot happens before or after the scene of them fighting on top of the Death Star ruins? I think it happens afterwards. They don't look wet in this shot, so it could be before. Maybe. The part where Luke says confronting fear is the destiny of the Jedi gave me chills and brought a tear to my eye. I hope he is saying this to both Ben and Rey. Something I've been theorizing about is what if the dagger Rey is holding is the Mortis dagger? and it's needed to kill Palpatine. I think that would be cool to bring in something from the Clone Wars, since we know that dagger can really kill powerful Force users. I'm just hoping for a really big moment where Rey and Ben kill Palpatine together in some way. Palpatine's line, "Your coming together will be your undoing," reminded me so much of his line in Return of the Jedi, where he told Vader regarding Luke, "His compassion for you will be his undoing. Have you learned nothing, Palps? LOL." Quick thought on the dagger being the Mortis arc dagger. If it is, I don't think there's going to be any backstory related to it. If that is and happens to be the same dagger from the Mortis trilogy, I think that perhaps they will reference it as that, but they're not going to get into the backstory fully and details of it. It'll be more like an Easter egg in the fandom. That being said, I don't think it is. I don't believe that in the Mortis arc, and I'll have to go back and watch it, there was anything about Sith inscriptions on it, although that could always be added later. And again, that seems a little bit too deep for them to be diving into in this final movie, because that would require a lot of exposition. All right, one more, and then we'll get into a little bit of what's going on with these leaks before we wrap the show up this week. A friend of the show, Howard, writes this. "So I watched the trailer on YouTube within minutes of it dropping. I was refreshing my work browser constantly. I watched it 6 times before even mentioning it to any of my coworkers or posting it on Facebook. The previous trailer provided the nostalgia factor and even a climactic feel towards the end. Not sure if that is the best way to put it, but this trailer is all about feeling and emotion, and I can't wait to see it. This was a concern for me with J.J. Abrams at the helm of the final movie. Don't get me wrong, he's a great storyteller and makes visually stunning films. But I'll reference Star Trek reboots as to why. J.J. Abrams made a visually appealing movies with good action-packed story that provided a lot of nostalgia, but some of the essence of Roddenberry was missing. Roddenberry had managed to incorporate ethics, moral into the story, science, and references to the literary classics within his shows and movies. The creators after tried to follow along that line as well. For as amazing as Abrams' Treks were, they did fall a little short there. I think The Force Awakens was more of a nostalgia plug while introducing new characters, though still a great movie. This is where I feel Johnson did a better job with The Last Jedi. No matter what, though, I wholeheartedly soak in what J.J. Abrams provides after watching the trailer. I look forward to what he and the cast and crew, and dare I say Disney too, deliver as the bookends to the saga. As always, may the Force be with you. Oh, and by the way, what did you think of the How It Should Have Ended Villains Pub return of Palpatine? I hope you got the same laughs out of it that I did. Honestly, I don't watch those How It Should Have Ended videos. They kind of bug me. So, I mean, I guess I can probably try to check that out, and I know you asked me to. I will, but I normally don't go and gravitate towards those. And I agree about J.J. Abrams, and even though I love those 2 Star Trek films he did, I was never I'm a Star Trek fan, but I'm more of a casual Star Trek fan. Like those Marvel fans that I talked about, or the majority of Star Wars fans. I'll go and see them in the theater, maybe more than once. I'll buy the Blu-ray, watch them over and over again, but I'm not listening to any Star Trek podcasts. Rian Johnson really set this whole thing up for J.J. Abrams well, and clearly based off of what we know officially and unofficially that I believe is completely relevant, I do absolutely believe that there's going to be some depth to the storytelling and the mythology and the Force. I mean, bringing Palpatine back and his means of bringing himself back into power, I think, is going to be deeply entrenched within the Force and mythology. All right, so that's it for listener feedback this week. I do want to talk a little bit about the promotional footage that has come out and about those leaks as well. But for those that maybe don't want to go down this road and don't want to be exposed to any leaks, I'm not planning on talking about anything too specific, but if you want to remain spoiler-free, then this is where you can peace out on the My Nerd World podcast. Before you go, though, again, just want to remind you that if you want to support the show and you haven't yet, please head over to Amazon.com for either yourself or a friend. You can gift them to a friend right there on the website and pick up my first 2 books in the EMBARK Science Fiction Space Opera Trilogy, EMBARK Book 1 and EMBARK Treasure in Darkness Book 2, available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Purchase of the ebook gets you the audiobook narrated and produced by me for a drastically reduced price. Buying the paperback, you'll get the ebook for free. Also, one more quick request, that if you have purchased the books, as always, thank you so much, and you've read them and you liked them, please go and leave a positive review. I definitely need more reviews for EMBARK, Treasure in Darkness, but I could really use some more positive feedback and reviews on Amazon to help continue the book sales. So if you enjoyed the books and you haven't yet, please head over to Amazon.com right now and drop me a positive review for either book. I would so very much appreciate it. It would just mean a lot to me. And again, if you haven't picked up the books yet, please go and do so. I am hard at work on book 3. I am nearing the end. I'm about almost 70,000 words into it right now. And it's shaping up quite nicely. I'm really, really excited. And this whole time in the Star Wars era has really inspired me. So head on over to Amazon.com, search for EMBARK, Jon Justice, and pick up a copy, whatever version of the book you want for you or a friend. And again, head on over and leave a positive review. I really would appreciate it.
The hyperdrive is leaking.
All right, so let's get into a few more things before we wrap things up. First off, there's an individual on Twitter, at Arlath, ARLAF _MA, at ArlithMaw. This person works in the industry somehow. Not going to say that they're not going to say who they are. They have been very open about how they use their Twitter account to connect with the fandom. They are definitely Reylo shippers, but they clearly are connected to Lucasfilm or Disney or production of the film. Even if it's something ancillary, okay? Really interesting account. I would suggest following them if you don't already, because they put out some really interesting information. And just this morning, they put this out. At this point, and again, it's ARLATH _MA, at Arlath _Ma. They wrote this morning. At this point, you may have noticed the marketing for The Rise of Skywalker has been themed to provoke the question, just what exactly is this movie? All of the mystery, all of the discourse, all of the controversy is well documented, as are the drops of official information. Intentionally promoting an air of mystery about an upcoming release is Marketing 101. Each piece of information is designed to provoke questions and to create hype, both good and bad. Information is released in response to social media reactions or to incite a predicted response. I personally dislike the emotionally exploitive nature of hype-focused marketing, but acknowledge that it's incredibly effective and an industry standard in the era of social media-focused promos. Just be aware there's always a plan. Then they wrote this. Every piece of official information, D23 promo, trailer, embargoed photos, has been given out to make people ask the question, why is this happening? Kylo / stormtroopers blown back. Rey / Kylo destroying the Vader helmet. Non-reveal of Palpatine. Dark Rey. Reforged helmet. Finn screaming Rey. Just some interesting comments from somebody who knows a bit about what they're talking about. They even went and pointed to a StarWars.com poll that asked, what is your favorite moment in the final Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker trailer? And I'll run through the list. And what they pointed to here was the focus of the marketing, and this is coming from somebody who is an absolute Reylo shipper. 1% said Rey training. 1% said the Resistance United, their favorite moment. 2% Star Destroyer rises. 4% the swarm of ships. I'm in the minority. 5% C-3PO's one last look. 1% a hug from General Leia. 1% Lando at the helm. 1% the running of the Orbax. 3% Rey and the hooded figure. 5% the Force will be with you always. 71% Rey and everything Rey and Kylo Ren. Isn't that interesting? All right, one more thing. So about those Jedi Paxis leaks. Every ad, according to an individual who goes by Brandon Bird online, right? Okay. This is somebody who works in the industry, and they had some very interesting things to say about these Jedi Paxis leaks. Every ad needs to be signed off by someone, and the execs in film and publishing are basically see you next year once December hits. So if they set a Thanksgiving internal deadline to have everything done, then yeah, they'd be working on it. I'm not saying anything about JJ's track record. Outsourcing trailers and ads isn't specific to Abrams or Bad Robot. Production companies make movies. Production companies that make ads, and Lucasfilm doesn't cut ads at all. They've always hired an agency to do that. There were plenty of StarWars.com articles about the making of the episodes 1, 2, and 3 trailers back in the day. You don't need to work in production to know that the Jedi Paxis leaks aren't 100% accurate. They've already been proven to be less than 100% accurate. Case in point, Kef Burr, not Endor, as said in the leaks. Okay, and this explains why the thing missing from the outlines is all the connective tissue. Who's doing what, where during the final battle? What's Rose's storyline? Who's Dominic Monaghan? Advertisers are not given the entire movie to pull from, and I never implied that they were. The people who cut the trailers are also not advertisers. Disney is the advertiser. The way the trailers and ads are made is the client, in this case Disney, provides the trailer house ad agency with assembly of footage from which to pull and cut from. Sometimes, especially when the film is in its early stages, this includes hours and hours and hours of dailies, and it's up to some intern to sort through that footage. In the case of something like Star Wars, it's all footage that has been pre-selected by the client, but it is still more material than makes it into the final trailer. And it is all the footage that hints at the story and is compelling. That's the whole point. We're all supposed to watch that trailer and make up the story in our heads. That's what Paxis is doing, but with a little more material. And so lastly, this person says this. It's not from the leaks. It's not from someone working on the movie itself. It's someone working on the trailer/ad production. You're going to see this shot in a TV ad post-Christmas, like how The Last Jedi ad started featuring Luke versus Kylo after the movie had been out a week or two. Those ads weren't cut that week. They were produced weeks/months earlier. My guess about Paxis and the various leakers this whole time, they know someone has seen tons of footage, key money shots, because that person's job involves cutting that footage together into ads. Paxis et al. Are piecing together a story from descriptions of that footage and making a bunch of inferences and leaps. That's why their outline fluctuates between extremely detailed and extremely vague. Like the people saying the trailer confirms Paxis have it backwards. The trailer confirms someone saw shots from the trailer. It would also explain why the leaks started recently instead of back when the film was being shot. My other reasoning for the leaks coming from an advertiser/trailer house side of things, those hires tend to be younger and not as formally industry-oriented. An editorial assessment on a film isn't going to say blank to anyone because their goal is to work their way up to editor. A guy who's a PA at a media house because it seemed like a fun job, they don't care. So, again, providing a bit of perspective on these leaks for those that have been following the leaks and why there is some validity to them, but there's a lot of connective tissue that's wrong, and hopefully we won't know the answer until we actually go into the theater come December 19th. So that's the show for this week. It was a long one. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. What are your thoughts on producing a video version of the show? Again, exactly the same. It would just be me on camera on YouTube, as opposed to having it just be audio. Leave a comment on YouTube, drop me that email. Positive review request for EMBARK Book 1 and 2. And if you haven't picked up the books yet, of course, go to Amazon.com, search for Jon, Jon Justice, and EMBARK. You'll find them there. I hope you have a fantastic week, and we will talk to you again next weekend. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.